A common question is, why don't men just do better? Surely they can try harder in school, employment, and health. Well, no other group is told when they suffer with reduced performance or accolades in the real world that they should just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We don't tell any other group to talk about their problems. Instead, we spend billions in taxpayer money and private charity to set up committees, departments, campaigns, and funds to solve the problem. In simple terms, if a woman has a problem, we ask, what can we do to fix society? If a man has a problem, we ask, what can men do to fix themselves? It's a blatant double standard, and people who are unwilling to admit any structural disadvantages faced by men are standing in the way of us solving the problems that are hurting men and also the potential partners who they may no longer be viable for. What's the point in asking men to talk if we are unwilling to listen or even acknowledge the societal issues that they're talking about? The problems are not in men's heads, but out there in society, and we should not gaslight men into thinking they can solve these problems by just trying harder or being less toxically masculine. If the patriarchy is so powerful, why aren't men flourishing more?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's an excellent rewording of what I said. I'm happy to take credit for it. I hope it went down well.
There it is.
I mean, can I respond with a quote of my own?
Absolutely.
Like, going back to suicide is a really interesting vessel to talk about this. This is said APPG, Boys and Men, is a new organisation that's launched in the UK. It's all-party parliamentary group, so it's different members of different political parties coming together to discuss an issue. There's one on everything. Now there's one on boys and men. They did an absolutely amazing report on male suicide, and this is what they found. Sort of what I said earlier. The APPG heard that the focus has been on viewing suicide primarily as a mental health problem, when in reality, it is largely the outcome of a range of external issues or personal stresses that take many men down the path to suicide. Suicide is a symptom or outcome of a buildup of stresses. Suicide is a choice made by men when these stresses reach a critical level and the stress bucket overflows. It is not the result of either a single cause or men not talking. These stresses range from a combination and culmination of issues such as relationship breakdown, work culture, employment, financial worries, and are more widely impacted by social isolation, loss of belonging, the lack of male-friendly services, and the lack of empathy towards men. We heard evidence that many men view suicide as a rational decision and a solution-based outcome based on their failure to fix these stresses. They often do not conceptualize their problems as being mental health problems. So, I mean, I'll read those issues out again, and you tell me, Chris, which of these could be solved through tears? Relationship breakdown, work culture, employment, financial worries. Like, being in debt isn't solved by crying. I mean, I'm sure
Talk about it. Just talk about it.
Yeah. It's like,
the bank will accept that, and you will be out of your overdraft.
Yeah. Can you talk about this for a moment? And don't get me wrong. Like, talking is a way of dealing with the problem, but I don't know how much it solves the problem. It certainly doesn't solve it in its complexity. I work a lot with a male suicide researcher called Susie, and together we've done some very large studies. Together we did one of the biggest studies into male suicide ever. And she has more experience talking to suicidal men than I think anyone you could ever meet. And what she told to me on my podcast was that she was like, the more I talk to these men and listen to the life they're living, the more I'm like, fuck, I'm not surprised you want to kill yourself. Like, it sounds awful. Like, you don't have a mental health problem. We need to stop pathologizing male suicide and masculinity and actually listen to what these men are saying. Like, it's no point men talking if we're not willing to listen. And the three words I try to bring in are listen, ask, and act. Like, what's the point in talking? So you got to listen, you got to act, and you got to ask. And there's no point. There really is a limited utility to men talking if society is not willing to listen, or if we're willing to tell people what they can and can't talk about. I get told what I can and can't talk about on my own page. People come into my page and they're like, you can't say that, don't say it this way. And I'm like, I'll say what I want. But it's strange how you say men can talk, but not about these things. And it's like, well, it's not really talking if you can't talk about the things I want to talk about.
I love that. I love that insight. You're not saying the right things.
Yeah,
don't talk about this stuff. We want you to open up, but we don't want you to open up in that way. We don't want you to open up in a politically uncomfortable way. Do you see John Barry's Center for Male Psychology? Did you see his new study?
I saw his podcast of you.
So this is a new one. This is John DM'd me this a couple of days ago. My latest research has just been published. It assessed the views of over 4,000 men in the UK and found that thinking masculinity is bad for your behavior is linked to having worse mental well-being. Around 85% of respondents thought that the term toxic masculinity is insulting and probably harmful to boys.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I put that into a post not long ago where I talked about the indoctrination of boys. We talk a lot about how Andrew Tate has indoctrinated boys, and in a lot of ways he has. I don't support Andrew Tate in the least, but we haven't also talked about how there are organizations that are going into schools right now to indoctrinate boys, educate them, just like Andrew Tate, but to educate them that they are violent, like rapists in waiting, and that the John Barry research you're talking about, I put that in. It was like a percentage of boys that have been introduced to the concept of men being bad for society, and the percentage of boys being told about toxic masculinity at like 10 years old. And it was really, really high. And the reason why I don't know the actual stats is because that slide was actually deleted by Instagram. Somehow that slide got reported and deleted. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with that slide. So it's a really great example of like, you don't get to talk about
Tell you what shows a associated story. You might have seen I put a reel up maybe a month ago talking about the fact that I'd once recorded a podcast with Andrew Tate but never released it. And I was talking about the fact that I'd had the opportunity to. I recorded it maybe 3 years ago when he was relatively small, and then I could have re-released it, or I could have released it for the first time at the height of his fame. It would have got millions of plays. Everybody in the comments, a couple of things. First off, everybody in the comments was saying, "This is you, your morality standing on the shoulders of sort of a high horse here." Like, I didn't need to know about the fact that you consider yourself virtuous. Well, if I had released it 3 years after a very bombastic guy was talking in the middle of a global pandemic, I would have also been accused of, hang on, mate, you've stitched him up. He doesn't believe this anymore. And it would have been harsh on Andrew. Most of the reason that I didn't release that a couple of years later is it's a shit thing to do to someone who was making claims when there was a lot of unknowns. And now there are knowns, and you can prove false a lot of the claims that he was making. Like, it's just a bad thing to do. I don't care who he is or what you think about him. You don't stitch somebody up with a 3-year-old video. Anyway, that was the first thing. Second thing, Instagram took that down. Instagram deleted it, and it had 2 seconds of him saying, "Hello, good to be here." That was it. He featured in a video so that is how tight they are on a number of topics, especially around boys and men.
Every single morning for over 3 years now, I've started my day the exact same way, which is with Element in water. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and it is the best hydration drink that I've ever found. It tastes fantastic. It's super refreshing. Orange is just the most OP flavor in the world. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it helps to play a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue. It regulates your appetite, it optimizes brain health, and it helps curb cravings. They're also the exclusive hydration partner to Team USA weightlifting and relied on by tons of Olympic athletes and everyday high performers all around the world. Also, there is a no BS, no questions asked refund policy where you can buy a box completely risk-free, and if you do not like it for any reason, they will give you a refund during an unlimited duration, and you don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you'll love it. Element are giving away a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box if you go to the link in the description box below, or drinklmnt.com/MW. That's drinklmnt.com/MW. What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full, unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe.